study cutting these expenses can add $500,000 to retirement savings. Let's face it, many Americans aren't doing a good job of saving for retirement. GoBanking rates, it's true that saving for retirement can be a struggle if you're living paycheck to paycheck. But a new GoBanking, try this. The survey asked respondents how much they spent annually on the following 6 categories. On average, respondents spent $5,339 annually on all of those expenditures combined. The biggest source of how much Americans spend on non-necessities every year. Men tend to spend more than women on non-essential items and services. The survey found how much Americans spend on non-necessities every year, by age and gender. The survey also found that younger adults tend to be bigger spenders than older ones. Millennials, find out A. How much can I save for retirement? If you've ever asked yourself that question, the answer is likely more than you would expect. You probably, based on the average spending of survey respondents, GoBanking rates found that Americans could save more than $600,000 before taxes by retirement age by cutting non-essential spending in half. This assumes that for those who cut non-essential spending in half and start investing the savings annually at age 35, their after-tax IRA balance would be approximately $283,707 at age 65, assuming a 7% annual return. If you start as you can see, the earlier you start saving, the more your money grows thanks to the power of compound interest. With compound interest, of course, the more you cut your spending, the more you can save and the bigger your nest egg will be at retirement. Retirement saving. In 2019, you can contribute up to $6,000 in a traditional IRA or Roth IRA. If you're 50 and find your state. Because millennials spend the most on non-essential items, on average, they stand to. If millennials ate, the 2 biggest categories of spending that millennials could eliminate to boost savings are eating out and ride shares. The survey found that if young generalsers ages 35 to 44 cut their average spending of $6,143 on non-essentials in half and invested that money instead, they could have an estimated $333,773 in savings by retirement age. This age group, older generalsers ages 45 to 54 spend an average of $5,999 annually on non-essential items. If they cut that spend, even baby boomers could benefit by reducing unnecessary spending. If they cut their average more on retirement, current retirees could add to their retirement savings or prolong the savings they have by reducing unnecessary spending. The survey found that, however, if retirees have debt, they should consider paying that off first before adding to their savings. By cutting how much retirees spend on non-necessities. More on retirement A. To reduce spending and increase retirement savings, you don't have to cut out everything you love. As GoBanking rate, the first step in cutting costs is to actually figure out where your money is going. Check your bank, and you can also reduce non-essential expenses by finding lower-cost alternatives. For example, once you figure out how much you can cut, have that amount automatically deposited into an IRA each month or increase your 401k contribution by that much, so the money will come out of your paycheck or checking account before you have a chance to spend it. Click through to read about what. More on retirement planning. We make money easy. Methodology for this survey, GoBanking rates asked 1,037 adults the following 6 questions. 1. How much do you spend on eating out, takeout and food delivery per week? 2. How much do you
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.